Well, welcome back, Divas and Dudes. Nice to see you all today on this kind of gray Saturday morning, but thank you for being here. We've got a great recipe and a great class today. We're going to do things a little bit differently. We're going to kind of swap it a little bit, but what I'd like to do is have a little more discussion. Our recipe won't take that long, so we're going to have an opportunity for you all to try it in a little bit. And I'll walk you through the steps of it. It's a very simple salad, but our topic today is energy and fatigue, so I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to discuss that. But before I even dive into that, I also want to do a recap from last week. So last week we were talking about the cephalic phase digestion, which was basically kind of taking our time, slowing down, and using a lot of our senses to experience things in our lives, and in particular how we kind of interact with food and our relationships with food. And you all had a little assignment. I don't know if anybody had an opportunity to take a look at the homework activity and kind of jot down some ideas on some activities or hobbies that you all enjoy that can also give you that connection to all of those sensations. So whether it was, there were some things about, travel or being outdoors in nature or, doing things with the group. Did anybody have a chance to kind of reflect on any of that from last week? Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was really nice. I took a week off from work because I had a dental extraction and implant done, so I figured just do it.
Okay.
So it was really nice. Before the day, I went over to Walker Ranch Senior Citizen Place. I don't know if you all are familiar. It's a beautiful senior citizens place over by the airport. And I visited with friends, and it's been a long time since I was able to do that because I work days.
Okay.
So that was extremely enjoyable, and you could eat outside, and we were eating outside, so it was really nice.
And it was called Walker Ranch?
Walker Ranch Senior Citizens Place.
Okay.
It's over by the airport. It's on Ramsey.
Fantastic.
Really, it's like a country club.
It's right off West Avenue.
Yeah, it's like a country club. It's really beautiful.
That's great. So you get sort of this beautiful environment, and then you get the community connection. So that's perfect. You got two things right off the bat. Anyone else have anything that they... Go ahead.
I had my port removed, so I had some peace, a little bit of time. Oh, no, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
But I had time where I was using, doing things in my brain instead of doing physical things. I would rip the stitches and stuff.
Yeah.
And I started making a list of places that I wanted to go in San Antonio that I haven't made it to yet.
Okay,
so,
great.
Like the Botanical Garden. I saw that they have some things going on.
Yes.
The zoo, I haven't been there yet. And my sister, when she lived here, Komodo dragon, so I have to see, get the Komodo dragon.
Okay.
Wow. And there's a Korean pavilion that's not too far from here, and there's only a few of those in the United States. And it was actually at the Denham Estate. And I was there last year quite a few times, and I'm going to go again. So if you haven't been there, you don't have to pay. You walk around a pond with ducks and geese and people. And there's picnic tables.
What's it called?
Just look up either Korean Pavilion in San Antonio.
It's beautiful. Denham
or
Park?
the Denham Estates, Dehman.
It's right across from Lowe's on Callahan.
Yes.
If you're at Lowe's and you if you're facing Lowe's, you look left across the street, you have to go it's right.
Yes.
Right there.
They have a little parking lot, and there's some other things kind of on the property. There's a beautiful old mansion, but I kind of stumbled upon it accidentally. I was waiting for something, and I drove into the park and just walked and saw this beautiful pavilion. But it's very breathtaking. If you haven't had an opportunity to see it, you should go check it out. But yeah, so one of the things that was on that list that we discussed was just exploring your own backyard. So I love that you're thinking, okay, now I'm ready to kind of get out, and what are some things just in my own backyard? The zoo, the botanical gardens are beautiful. And yeah, that Korean pavilion is awesome. So great, fantastic. Well, thank you all. If you haven't had a chance, I definitely recommend you all think about that. Spend some time reflecting on what are some of the things that I can also receive, that pleasure, because that's what it was. It was a pleasure inventory, right? We wanted to kind of find other ways to interact and get those same kind of highs and just excitement and just experiencing all those different senses, because a lot of times we often look to food for that, right? And that's not a bad thing. Food is comfortable. We come out of the womb expecting comfort. We want food. That's in our nature. but then sometimes we can have these attachments to food that can become, habits, and sometimes they're unhealthy habits. And so we want to make sure that we have kind of a variety of different ways that we connect to things that bring us pleasure. And something as simple as, exploring, finding a hobby, connecting with people to get that same experience is another way to have those alternatives in our lives. One thing also I wanted to mention, so after I left here, after our last class, I was curious about the brown chickpea. And I just happened to come across, there is this international market on Fairview, I believe, and Medical Drive. And I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a little flyer I'll share with you all, but they do happen to have the brown chickpeas. So I wanted to kind of pass those around for you all to just kind of check out. And if you're curious, they have some really beautiful things in that store. And it's just for me, as somebody who works with food and loves to teach people about different cuisines, it was fun to be able to find a place so easily and just say, oh, let me go see what's in there. So that's also kind of fun too. If you're not familiar with a lot of cuisine, the people there were very helpful and just kind of sharing what they have available. But it's kind of a nice little adventure. If you're kind of wanting to learn a little bit more about a cuisine, ask them. And so she gave me a quick little recipe that she does with these chickpeas. It just had onions, a little bit of chili pepper, and I believe she said tomato. And she just kind of mixes that up with the chickpeas, and that's how she enjoys it. So that was kind of a fun thing for me to learn about.
You could do the same recipe for the chana masala that you did for this.
With the brown chickpeas, yeah.
Or you can saute it with onions and mushroom, dry it completely, and then grind it mush it a little bit, and make burgers out of it.
Oh, that would be delicious too. Yeah.
Actually, it comes out really well with some ginger and garlic paste, onion, mushrooms.
Do they taste very different from the other kind of chickpeas?
It tastes better than that.
I feel like they might have more flavor, right?
Yeah,
like
it's more dense, and it's definitely more flavorful.
Okay. I kind of wanted you all to try them, but maybe we can open one up when we have the sample of our recipe today, and you all can try that. Cause
I used to teach cooking classes, and I made this at the Turkish community center.
Oh, okay.
For 60 people, and there wasn't a single piece left.
So it's a hit.
What? There wasn't a single piece left of what?
Of the black chickpea burgers that I had.
Okay, so what was the ingredients again?
Huh?
What was the ingredients again?
Oh, I can email you. I think I have it on my computer somewhere. I was looking for it last week. I couldn't find it, but you just Google black chickpea burger recipe YouTube.
Okay.
And you'll find 100 Indians showing you how to make it.
I love that.
And you can do it with any lentils.
Okay,
Fantastic.
so brown chickpeas.
Thank you for sharing that.
I'm sorry, what was you called?
Black chickpea burger recipe YouTube.
Oh.
Okay, I love this. We're building a community of recipe sharing. Okay, so while you guys are looking at that, I'm going to move us into our lesson here because there's a lot of great information. And so I want you all to kind of also have an open mind about this conversation today, because what I'd like to share with you is slightly different. It's a different perspective and a different take on energy and fatigue. And why am I talking about energy fatigue and how it relates to how we choose food or how we interact with food? Because that also is another avenue to explore. And so when we think about energy and how we go about our day to day, sometimes we think, oh, if I just had this, I would have more energy. Like, energy seems like something that's sort of outside of us, like it's external, right? But actually, what I like is, if you take a look at the handout that we have today, there's this really beautiful quote about, in Chinese medicine, it said that we come into this world with a certain allotment of energy from birth, so it's good to spend that energy wisely. So we have basically what we need within us, and you might have heard that in different iterations of other things in our lives. But I do feel very strongly that energy is really one of those. And it's more of how we look at it and how we're managing our energy, right? So how we're either using it to amplify us and finding things that help us amplify our energy, or we're spending time in things that really drain our energy. And we just need to be able to sort of find a balance in that so that we're not constantly fatigued. So sometimes, though, energy can be just some physical things. And you all may have experienced some of this along your journey or just sometime in your life, different phases of your life, and it can have just some very physical symptoms. So we had talked previously about stress state eating and fast eating, right? That's a very physical thing. The way that you're interpreting food and or metabolizing food, it's just in this kind of constant state of just fast, hurried pace. Another thing is an unbalanced diet or inconsistent eating habits. So I know she's not here today, but we were talking about, when you're a caregiver and you're kind of rushing and you just need to kind of find something quickly. And she was referring to, stopping at a fast food place and eating something. And so I think when you have, times in your life when you're skipping meals, maybe not intentionally, but because that is just the pace of your day, or you're just not eating things that are nutritionally balanced, so you don't have enough healthy fats, you don't have enough proteins or enough carbohydrates, and a lot of times people tend to shy away from some of those key nutrients because they either feel like, oh, if I eat that, I'll get too heavy, I'll get too full or whatever. But some of those things are actually, all three of those things are really critical to our diet and to our energy and to our fuel. So that's a very physical connection. The other thing is nutritional deficiencies. And so I know I've experienced this throughout my time in my life, is where sometimes it's just a simple thing where you're off in a certain vitamin or a mineral like vitamin D or iron or something, and that can severely affect your energy level. And I think a lot of times people just kind of go through the motions of the day and they sort of think, oh, it must be because of this or it must be because of that. But a simple blood test and seeing your doctor on a regular basis can help you just identify if it is something that simple. Has anybody experienced anything like that before where maybe, you thought, oh, it might have just been something normal, or you just thought it was just something, that was just happening. You didn't think it was anything related to like your physical makeup.
Right, yeah. Mine turned into blood cancer though.
Okay. Yeah.
But it like sapped vitamin
right.
D and zinc and, iron and everything. So for me, it just kind of, the cancer ate all that. And I was working full time. It's like, oh, I'm just tired, it's fall. And it ended up being something a bit different. But yeah, I had all of that.
But the thing I think that's important too is that we learn to recognize like what's our regular normal state, right? going back to what's kind of our natural allotment of energy, what's kind of our disposition, right? Are we normally kind of a even keel kind of energy type, or are we sort of higher energy all the time, or are we kind of in the realm of like maybe we're sort of a homebody and we kind of have just sort of a lower energy level? Like I think that's really important to distinguish as well, because when something like what you experienced happens, you tend to react a little bit sooner because you're like, something feels different, something is a little bit off, so I need to get that checked out. And from there you can find all of the the tests that can help determine what exactly it is. And it is kind of helpful if it is something very simple like a nutrition deficiency, where it's like a simple vitamin supplement or something like that can get you back on track, or an infusion or something like that. Excess caffeine. So who here is a caffeine drinker? Loves their coffee, loves their soda, their tea, their caffeine, chocolate. I am as well, and I will say I am one of those people who says everything in moderation, and caffeine is a tough one for a lot of people, because sometimes what happens is people use it as sort of the spark right to the morning to get them going, because they either haven't had enough sleep, so they're really fatigued. They're like, I'll just have this cup of coffee before anything and I'll get the energy back. But what happens sometimes, do you think, when you've had that cup of coffee and maybe you haven't eaten enough? What sort of happens to your energy throughout the day, if anybody's experienced this? You crash, yeah. So caffeine is great. It's delicious. I enjoy the whole experience of making the cup of coffee for myself. And sometimes now I put more of my emphasis on like the ritual of having that cup of coffee and what that means to me, like sitting outside on my balcony and enjoying the taste of it, the smell of it. Like that for me, I only do decaf now. So, and one cup is plenty. But yeah, I think watching caffeine, because it can become one of those things that ends up draining your energy. And sometimes we talk about, there can be things that really are positive and you enjoy them and they bring you energy, but they can also, if you do them in excess, drain your energy. So that's important to remember too. So obviously health conditions or medications that can affect your ability to just absorb as much nutrition from the foods that you're eating. Say you have like a diet that's well balanced, but you have some conditions that are happening to you that are affecting your ability to actually absorb and metabolize all of the foods that you're eating. I've suffered from things for many years over the years, digestive things, and that's a simple, problem that can cause wreak all sorts of havoc, being able to digest food and getting all the nutrients. And so having to find like supplements to help make sure I'm getting what I need to stay healthy. You all in your, different various stages of your journey with your cancer, like obviously all of the treatments that you're getting, really critical, really important to make sure that you're maintaining as well a balanced diet as possible, because there may be some times when you can't fully absorb all the nutrition that you need. So that's a big one. And then low pleasure dieting or food restriction, or low pleasure diet, I should say, food restrictions and dieting. That is such a big one in our culture. It is something that, there's a whole industry of health, wellness, and dieting, sadly. And this could be a whole other class for another time, but I do feel like a lot of times people forget about the pleasure of enjoying food. And part of that is because they're restricting food. Now, sometimes with whatever health conditions you may have, that may be required for a short period of time to get you back to, your status quo of being healthy. Some people, can't have excess sugar. Some people can't have excess salt. Some people can't have caffeine or alcohol. So all of those things are important to, listen to your body, make sure you're feeding it and fueling it the right way. But I think sometimes where people get into a little bit of a challenge is when they completely restrict things. And there was a woman actually who was here last week too. I don't see her here this week, but she was saying there are a lot of foods that are off her list right now because of her condition. And that can be really frustrating and difficult, because then you feel like you can't enjoy food at all. And you're like, well, what's left for me to eat? And so I think that's when it's really important to find, just little things, even some snacks that are nutritionally balanced, just what we call kind of like nutrient dense foods. They have those healthy fats, they have those proteins, carbohydrates, and just all the healthy, balanced vitamins and minerals that we need, because maybe you're eating smaller portions, eating maybe more along the day, or just eating kind of when you feel like you can eat. And it is a different way of sort of managing your body, which is different. And I think that could be a whole other class as well, because it's difficult. You'll go through these phases, and if you love food, or you know that it's important that you need a certain amount of food to just have the energy, then seeing that you have a whole bunch of foods that are off the table can be really difficult, and you're not even sure where to start. So yeah, that's where, we do this pleasure inventory, and we say, okay, what sorts of things do I enjoy? What other foods, I would add to that, do I enjoy that, maybe it's something that's a little more simpler and it's not all these rich flavors, kind of like our recipe last week that had all these spices. Maybe it's something that's a little simpler, easier to digest, easier kind of on the senses as well. Think about all those things if that is something that is one of the factors that's affecting your health. And then the last thing is food allergies. So some people suffer from just really severe food allergies, shellfish, maybe dairy, kind of the common ones, wheat, gluten. And that can definitely affect, how our energy is. A lot of times I've worked with dietitians who have worked with patients who have said, once I got off of the dairy and the wheat, I was much more clear, I had much more energy. And that again is like paying attention to your body. And I was talking to somebody recently about specifically wheat, and I may have shared this with you all the first week, that the way that food is processed here in our country now, it definitely is to maximize like the actual ingredients. So for example, with wheat and gluten, they want to maximize as much gluten in the products, and that's typically not something that our bodies are adjusted to. So when we have an excess of that kind of nutrient in our diet, or that kind of ingredient in our diet, and we're not adjusted to it, then we're going to have some kind of reaction to it. So I do think that it is really critical to pay attention to that as you're kind of building some recipes or trying different foods, because food allergies are a pretty sensitive one. Some people end up having, they could be sensitive to gluten, so they might have more severe conditions like celiacs or Crohn's disease. And that can be pretty exacerbated by, enjoying these foods if they're not aware that they actually have that. So I think it's important, again, to just kind of look at sort of these physical things and how they can manifest in our body, but that's kind of just one phase of it. So any questions on this before we kind of open the door to something a little bit different when it comes to energy and fatigue? Okay. All right, well, if you flip the page over, I want you all to think about what it would be like to think about our energy and fatigue in particular as a teacher. So I'm really kind of pressing everybody to think about paying attention to their body and listening to what the body is trying to tell us. Because sometimes fatigue just simply means we need some downtime, right? Where it's kind of forcing us into this downtime of just rest and relaxation. And if you remember from the first week, we were talking about that rest and digest stage where our body is better able to assimilate and digest all of our food. So that's really important to us. So it's, again, kind of a physical thing, but sometimes we're in this fast pace and we kind of create our own fast pace sometimes. And we need to just kind of take that moment to just chill, relax, and rest, right? I was saying to Jose this morning, I'm the poster child of energy and fatigue today because yesterday my day was all filled with appointment after appointment and I woke up at 2 a.m., unfortunately, and it went till about 10 p.m. And so, talk about having a long day of just like being physically fatigued, but then I had a lot of things that kind of went along the day. But I just had to kind of take a moment to rest. But then there are some things aside from this where we kind of build our own fatigue, right? So we drain our energy. And I want you all to kind of walk with me through some of these because I want to see if there's any of these that kind of resonate with you. And we'll have an activity as usual. We'll have a take-home exercise for you all to think about that some more. But on the first of the list here is self-chosen stress. So these are the things where, we're creating those excess to-do lists. I'm a fan of to-do lists, but maybe you're putting things on there that don't really need to be on there. They're not high priority. And we get ourselves sort of in this kind of scramble of like, I have to accomplish all of this in the day, otherwise my day is not productive. Anybody guilty of that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it happens a lot. And so, or it could just be something, a dynamic of maybe something at work or with family, and you've had a misunderstanding, and maybe you're ruminating about what happened, and you're not really communicating, but you're just kind of thinking over and over. You're playing through the kind of how the scenario went, and you're just, kind of assuming. That builds up a lot of, energy drain as well, because you're not getting to the root of, what might have happened in that conversation. And so being able to just kind of talk to somebody directly and just work out what might have happened is helpful, because then that releases all of that kind of anxiety and angst about what was going on, and you've got clarity, and so that helps with your energy. Emotional metabolism. So if you think about like a lot of how how can I put this? We go through a range of emotions: stress, anxiety, fear, happiness, right? If we are out of whack in any of those, or we're too much in one of those, that's going to affect our energy. So if you're in a constant state of stress and worry about something, that's affecting how we're going through the day, how much energy we have. Because again, like that scenario I just described, we might be thinking about it all the time, right? And it's kind of this thing on repeat in the back of our minds. But it's definitely affecting us, and it could be something that you're worried about. Maybe it's something that's happening with your health, something that's happening with a person that you love, you take care of. Maybe it's something that's happening at work, or maybe it's finances, something, there's all these different categories. But we have to learn how to regulate that and balance that, because otherwise then, again, we're putting too much into this category of items that can drain our energy, and we want to have more of the balance instead. Unspoken communication is the next one, and we kind of talked a little bit about that, but I think, has anybody ever been in a scenario where maybe you've had a conflict or a misunderstanding with somebody, And, sometimes I think a lot of people don't like to confront, right? Like, we don't want to be that person to kind of bring up stuff and possibly have it cause something that would make everybody uncomfortable. And so instead, we just kind of sit with it, but that is internalizing it, and that's also affecting us physically, but it's also affecting us emotionally, and it's affecting our energy level. Anybody? Quick show of hands. I definitely, with family, that's a tough one all the time. So definitely been guilty of that. And then the last one is kind of unique. I don't know if you all have heard this phrase before. Undigested life experiences. And this is a big one. And I like the way that it's phrased because it's basically anything in your life. It could be something that happened yesterday. It could be something that happened to you 20 years ago. But they're things that maybe might have been some trauma or just some conflict in your life or something that really kind of shook your world in a different way. And a lot of us are walking around with all of that every day. And maybe we don't think about it every day, or maybe we do. Maybe you lost a loved one, and that is part of your life now. But there are these big undigested. We haven't really fully worked through the emotion of maybe grief or the emotion of anger or any of those emotions that come up with something that's that poignant in our life, and that affects our energy. And we don't think about it, but we carry that with us, and it's draining our energy until we have an opportunity to open that door a little bit. And that's the hard thing. That's why I say for these categories, these might be some sources of energy that get drained, right? They drain our energy, but maybe we're a little hesitant to think about or to talk about because they're uncomfortable. They make us sad. They are filled with hurt or anger, and so it's hard for us to talk about that to loved ones, to friends, to a professional. But it's really helpful to look at that if you've explored all of the other physical things that we've talked about, where you've said, okay, well, I've gone to the doctor, I've checked all of this, I'm healthy, I'm doing all the things with my diet, my exercise, and all of that. What else could be going on? Think about some of these things that we just talked about, because there could be some things that are unresolved, and maybe it takes a couple of years to get through that, to work through that, because it's big and it's heavy. And we want to be, we're in this culture thinking everything every day has to be happy and light, but we know that's not the reality, right? Things are going to happen to kind of knock us off balance. And I've said that a lot because I think we are so resilient and we are able to kind of find our center again, but sometimes we need a little bit of help along the way. And sometimes we need to look a little bit deeper within ourselves and use things like fatigue as a teacher, instead of saying, I'm just really exhausted, or looking outside of what is in our world to say, well, let's put the blame on this, or maybe attribute this to something that's not within my realm of things, because sometimes it is, we do find the answers within ourselves, right? There might be something that maybe we hadn't thought about in a while, but it still kind of like sticks, and I would encourage you all to explore that, because you might find some little tidbits there that would be helpful to you as you go along your way in thinking about how can I really maximize the energy that I have. And I do think, to kind of summarize this, like, we all have inherently sort of this disposition, and we know, even throughout our course of our lifetime, this is sort of my disposition. I'm either kind of even keel, or I'm typically high energy. But then also, as we change and we grow and we get older, that might change, that might fluctuate a little bit. And I think part of that too is like giving ourselves the grace to appreciate that, and to really understand that and to make peace with that. Like, we're going to go through this lifetime and have different shapes and bodies and things that we enjoy. And I think part of that too is just understanding, like, we have to see where we're currently at, the present moment, and understand our life from that moment. So using fatigue as a teacher can be a really, really helpful strategy and a tool. And I would encourage you all to reflect a little bit on that. So for our activity to take home, this last sheet is aptly titled, Where Attention Goes, Energy Flows. So you have two categories. One, very sunny, bright yellow, energy gain. And then you also have, here on the other column, is kind of light gray energy drain, right? So just making a quick list. And so I would encourage you all to think about this. You are going to be the outside observer in your life. And you can do this for the next week after we leave here today. And just think about all of the stuff that we talked about, and then anything else maybe that kind of came to mind as we were having this discussion. What is in this category here that brings you energy? And then what's in the other category that tends to drain your energy? Maybe it's that neighbor that you have the conversation with and they're always complaining about stuff. You know, sometimes people are just like, they're complaining about something and that energy is just kind of, it feels different to you because you're used to being kind of like neutral or just a little, you know, happy, positive. And then you're with this person who's the opposite. Maybe it's something as simple as that. Energy gain, maybe it's something as simple as, you know, enjoying a park, kind of similar to what we did last week with that activity. But there could be some other things that come up for you. So I'm going to encourage you all to think about that, and that'll be the exercise for next week. Okay, any questions on any of that before we move on to our recipe? I had you all very quiet for a few minutes. Okay. Well, thank you all for indulging me in that conversation. I know it's a little bit different than what you might be used to, but I definitely think there are some nuggets of wisdom there that I would love for you all to reflect on, and we'll share next week. So, moving us into our recipe. So this recipe I picked, it's definitely something that will give you some good nutritional energy. It is a spinach and berry salad with a creamy poppy seed dressing. And has anybody enjoyed anything like this or made anything like this before? Okay. Yeah, it's a pretty common sort of diverse salad that has like a variety of ingredients, I want to say. And what I love about it is, so, you know, if you aren't able to enjoy dairy, you see a lot of these delicious creamy dressings, and how can you enjoy that without the dairy? So today I wanted to share with you a way to do that. We're going to be making a dressing with this, it's an almond milk and coconut cream based yogurt. You can find it at H-E-B. What I love about it is you can get it in a plain flavor, so you could make this dressing sweet or savory. So today we're going to do it a little bit sweet. The thing about, what I also love about this yogurt is it's high in protein, so it has about 12 grams of protein per serving, and it only has 1 gram of sugar. So we're going to sweeten it a little bit with some natural sweeteners here, but you could also just keep it plain like that. So I love this because there are a lot of these ingredients now on the market, and I've been dairy-free for decades, so I've tried a lot of them. And I often feel like people who have sensitivities to food are probably some of the best judges for, you know, telling you what products to use, because they've probably also tried all of them. This one has a great thick consistency like Greek yogurt, so if you're not a fan of Greek yogurt but you want something that's a good substitute, this one's pretty good. Cost-wise, it's just a few cents more than a regular Greek yogurt, so I like that as well. And you'll often see it on sale at H-E-B, just where all the regular yogurts are. But I want to start with that. Oh, and before I go on, you might be wondering why this bottle is here. So the inspiration for this recipe came from this bottle of, it's a honey ginger white balsamic vinegar, and it's from, has anybody ever been to one of those places where you can sample the vinegars and the oils? Okay, I love those places, and there's one in my neck of the woods, but it isn't often open, and so I would recommend, if you do want to check it out, call ahead. But it's from a place called Gourmet Olive Oils at 1913 South Hackberry. And the woman there who runs it is delightful, and she will let you sample as many, as often as you'd like, and she has great information and knowledge about it. But I loved the combination of this vinegar that had honey and ginger. Ginger, last time we talked about, great anti-inflammatory properties. Vinegar, good for our gut, right? But this was just kind of nice because it had great flavor. So I use it to make a lot of dressings, and I made this poppy seed dressing with that. Today I'm going to do, if you didn't have that, what you could make, or how you could make it. So essentially what we're going to do is use some apple cider vinegar, which is one of my favorite things because it's naturally sweet. Also good for the gut, right, as we talked about before. We used this in our pickled onions the first week. And then we're going to just use some honey. This is pasteurized, so I know it's important not to have unpasteurized honey for folks who have some immune compromised systems. So we're just making sure we have regular honey for that. And then we also have some extra virgin olive oil. I like this brand. You could use any. I like it because it tends to be fruity, so it's also a really important source of healthy fats, right? Olive oil. We're also using poppy seeds, so very easy to find those, and a little bit of salt and some water. So simple ingredients for the dressing. And if you didn't want it to be sweetened, like I said, you could just keep the honey out because the apple cider vinegar is pretty sweet, or I should say it's mildly sweet. Actually, I wanted to also point out, so for the recipe that you all have in front of you today, I believe it says 3 tablespoons of honey. The sample that you all will be getting in a few minutes, I added an additional tablespoon of honey because I tried this recipe, I tested it with a different vinegar, and the vinegar was a little bit more, not as mild and sweet like this one. So the one that I'll do right now will have just the 3, but the one that you'll be trying was a little more sour, I should say, and so I added another tablespoon of honey, so you can try the difference. Okay, so what we're going to do is just a little bit of our yogurt here, and just going to set this aside. Okay, and what we're going to do next is add our poppy seeds, so just a tablespoon of poppy seeds to that. And for our, actually I'm going to do the vinegar next. We have a 1/4 cup of vinegar. This comes together really well. It can last in the refrigerator, I'd say probably about a week. And then we're going to do 3 tablespoons of honey. There are a lot of delicious honeys out there. I mean, if you go to the grocery store, you can find, it's always buy the peanut butter, if you notice that. But there are some really beautiful local honeys if you can have raw honey. Somebody once told me after I shortly moved to San Antonio that the way to get acclimated, because we have a lot of seasonal allergies here, is to eat local honey. Have any of you ever heard that? Yeah, I definitely subscribe to that because it has helped.
So one of our divas, Veronica Hawk, she's a beekeeper, and she will sell you her honey, and she harvests it twice a year, in spring and in fall,
Oh,
and it
that's
tastes
nice.
different.
Yes.
And you can just email her, and she'll keep you a jar.
Well, yes, and depending on what the bees are kind of hanging around, that will affect the flavor of the honey. Yeah, exactly. Actually, before I add the water, I'm going to make a note on that. So for the olive oil, I'm just adding a 1/4 cup of that as well. And when I add the water, so I like my dressing a little bit thicker, but you can thin it out with some water. So you can go either a 1/4 cup or a 1/2 cup on that. This just has a beautiful fruity flavor and smell, actually. I'm just going to give it a little stir here before I add the water so you can see the consistency.
Did you make this recipe up yourself?
This one I did, but there's some general, you could also Google and just kind of see what's out there. And like I said, I wanted something that was similar to what you'll find, but that was dairy-free. So this was my version. That was 1/2 teaspoon of just regular salt. And so if you can see, it's still nice and thick and creamy. I kind of like it this way, but we're going to add a little bit of water just to thin it out. And you could go either a 1/4 cup or a 1/2 cup. I'm going to do a 1/2 cup here. And I'm just going to slowly just drizzle that in as I'm whisking it, just so that it thins out and whisks all together very well. And that is as easy as it gets. So like I said, you could keep this in a little mason jar. If you happen to have salad dressing jars that maybe you've saved and recycled, you can put that in one of these and then stick that in your fridge. It will last about a week. But see now how the consistency is a little bit thinner and perfect for topping your salad. Now, one thing I would recommend with this salad, when you typically make a salad, sometimes you want to dress your salad and toss it all together. With this one, because it's a little bit heavier and the greens that we're using are spinach, they're kind of more delicate, it might tend to weigh down that. So what I do is I just get all of my ingredients mixed together and just drizzle the dressing on top. And you can do as much as you like. And so we're going to be passing some of your own little salads out with some dressing, so you can give that a try as I keep working through our recipe here. What do you guys think so far?
Very good.
Okay. All right. So while we're getting those passed out to you all, the next ingredient we're going to use is spinach. And this is baby spinach. It's already been washed. I love baby spinach. Another thing that inspired this recipe was I was at the local grocery store and they had fresh spinach in the bunch, and that tends to be a lot darker green. It's got this nice, even more curlier leaf. If you can find that, I highly recommend it. One thing to do is to really soak it and wash it really well because it has a lot of the dirt, right?
So just in water?
Yeah, just soak it in some cold water. And then if you happen to have, I have this cool little salad spinner that I've had for years. I just tear it up and then I put it in the spinner and just aerate it so that I can get some of that dampness off of it. And I'll keep it in a plastic Ziploc bag, and that'll keep pretty well for about a week as well. Does anybody do any meal prepping here throughout the week for themselves? A couple of you. Okay. This salad would work really well. I've done this quite a bit for my lunches. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of combine some of my ingredients that aren't so wet, right? So I'll do a little bowl of lettuce, maybe put some of the nuts and the blueberries, and then when I'm ready to do the strawberries that next morning, as I'm getting ready for work, I'll chop up the strawberries just so that they don't get too mushy. The dressing, again, you can make in advance and then just take a little container. So sometimes people tend to think that meal prepping has to be a million different things and it's going to take too long, but this recipe would work really well for weekly salads that you want to do for home. Okay, so spinach is a great source of fiber. Also a great source of iron, right? So we were talking about maybe you just have some nutritional deficiencies that are depleting energy. Spinach, any dark leafy green, is going to give you some great vitamins and minerals that you need to definitely give you some energy. Also, I have heard that it is great for reducing low blood pressure because it's a great source of potassium, so another added bonus. But I love spinach. I love the texture of it. Again, we're talking about like when you make a meal for yourself, make sure that you're putting it in some beautiful things so you can have the eye appeal of it as well. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, I'm just going to chop up some beautiful strawberries. These are some nice organic strawberries from the local grocery store, but look at how lovely they are. These nice little small, super red, so I know they're going to be sweet. You all have your salads? Okay. If you want to dig in, I know we're kind of a little bit on a time schedule for today, so please feel free to dig in and enjoy your salads while I'm finishing up today. But all I'm going to do with the strawberries is I'm just cutting off the top and I'm going to quarter them. Are there any places here where you all tend to go to, are there any you-pick strawberry fields? Poteet is probably the closest, right? But they just had their strawberry festival back in April. Yeah, okay. I still haven't gone to it, but I've heard good things. Okay. So I just have, these nice flat strawberries now that I can easily just slice in one direction and slice in another to quickly get these nice little small quarters. And that's what we're going to add to our spinach in just a moment. So you can add as many. This was just a little 1 pound container that I had. This would be a beautiful salad that you could make for friends coming over for lunch or brunch. If you know me, you also know that I don't just like to eat salad, but if there is anything where you have a regular recipe and you want to build on it, right? We're just talking about meal planning. What could you do to this recipe to give you an additional source of protein? Because we have one source of protein already, which is the nuts, right? Our pecans.
Could add chicken.
Chicken would be great.
Quinoa based.
Quinoa, exactly. You could do a nice whole grain like quinoa.
Chickpeas also will go
The black chickpeas, yeah, that would be great. So you could make, you could add it maybe as you could do a bowl. Those are very popular. Or you could just do it on the side, right, for dinner. Maybe grill up some chicken. I think some grilled shrimp would be really tasty in this, actually. So I'm just going to add these beautiful strawberries on top. just like that. Look how colorful also, right? Again, we're always striving for making sure that we have a variety of colors, because that means that equals a variety of nutrients and vitamins. Strawberries, great source of vitamin C, and they just taste really good. And then we have our blueberries. And so blueberries have always been kind of like the culinary darling because they are a superfood. They also a great source of vitamin C, but they have great antioxidants, and we love that. So we're going to add some of these blueberries in there as well. This salad, I think you will see in so many different versions. I'm just taking the stem off of these blueberries because I don't like to eat the stem. But you will see so many variations of the salad, but I think it's because it's so popular, because spinach is, yes, a plus, right? All of the healthy things, the natural sweetness. That's also why I don't know if any of you are trying the dressing. If you think it's too sweet or you think it's not sweet enough, the berries are going to complement that. And that's what you want to think about when you're building a salad like this. Maybe you don't want too much of the sweet. You want more of the creamy. Well, you definitely have that from this dressing, because as you see, it's got this nice consistency to it. And then the last thing we're going to do is just add on our pecans. Now, one thing I didn't do for today, but you could also do, is you could toast these and just give it another, more full flavor. It'd be a little nuttier, but you could just put these in a little skillet over some medium heat and just, toss them around in that pan. Don't let them burn. Don't walk away and let them burn. Or you could also put them on a baking sheet and pop them in the oven, maybe like 250, just for a few minutes if you had time to do that. But that would also give another dimension of flavor to the nuts and also to this salad. So, what do you all think? A lot of great, very simple, but there's a lot of great ingredients in this that will definitely help fuel us and give us energy. So this is one easy way that you can look at it. I love the way that you all thought about, maybe I can make this with an additional protein, adding a grain like quinoa, maybe some brown rice. There's also something, I'm not sure if I mentioned it to you all, but there's something called bulgur wheat, which actually you can find at this international store for a great price. That's one of my favorite grains. Anything like that will bulk up this salad. I am not like, I'm sorry?
Beans, like black beans.
Black beans, yeah, we said the brown chickpeas or black beans. Even a white bean would be really nice in here. You could also marinate some beans and put them in there. Chickpeas would be great for that. But yeah, very simple, super easy to get all the ingredients, and comes together very quickly. So, any questions?
Can you do this with dairy yogurt?
Absolutely, yeah. And so that you'll probably find most of the recipes with Greek yogurt or just a regular plain yogurt for this, because that's kind of, I think, where this originated from. But sometimes it's nice to have the dairy-free alternative.
Cheese, like mozzarella.
Ooh, yeah, that would be really nice. Yes. So in addition to the papaya ceviche where we were talking about, you could do this on a platter, and serve this, for a summer gathering. This would be great too on a nice platter, and then adding some little mozzarella balls, or maybe even some like feta cheese, some kind of saltier, drier, crumbly cheese would be great on this. Mm-hmm. So that's, again, dairy, getting some dairy and getting an additional source of protein as well. Mm-hmm. Great.
Question.
Yes.
So the ginger,
yes.
do you use that in the salad instead of some other things?
So what I did originally was I just didn't add the vinegar and I didn't add the honey. I just added this as my vinegar. Instead, I use this in place of the vinegar, and just a little, because it has great flavor naturally. So I didn't have to do much, and I just loved the way it tasted. And I was like, boy, this is a great dressing. I could eat this all the time. And I will admit and confess, I am not a big fan of salads, because I feel like it needs to have a lot of different textures for me to enjoy. And so when I have something like this beautiful creamy dressing that goes on all this crunchiness, but I know I'm getting the iron from, my dark greens, I'm happy. I'm a happy camper. So it has to be not only pleasing to the eye, but pleasing to the palate, right?
So if you was going to use that, you would substitute, you would not put in the apple cider vinegar or the honey?
Yes.
And how much of that would you use? You said?
I think with this, I probably would have used maybe like a a tablespoon or two because it has such concentrated flavor that you don't need a lot. Yeah, I would say go with your palate and adjust. Yeah, feel free to pass that around. You can open it and smell it. I mean, it's a beautiful product, but they have all sorts of different flavored things. So, okay, any other questions?
So the yogurt that you use, does it have any artificial sweetener in it?
So actually, I wanted to pass that around so you all can see that. So this has no artificial. It has some natural flavors, it says, but I was reading further some nutritional information. No like preservatives, nothing like that. No artificial flavors. It's basically almond milk and coconut cream, which is essentially when they take like the coconut pulp and they shred it. It just has more coconut to less water when they blend it, so that's why you get this thicker consistency, this cream. But it has soy protein is the protein that you'll see for this. This is where that protein content comes from. And then it has the active, just like bacteria, the good probiotics for us. But feel free to I'll pass it around this way if you guys want to see that. Okay. All right, well, next week or actually the week after, we'll finish up the series, and we are talking about a little bit more nutrition. So we're going to be talking about macronutrient balance and making sure that we have all these healthy things in our diet and that they're balanced. But then we're also going to take a look and do an exercise of all the recipes that we did and just kind of dissect them and say, like, how are they balanced, right? And then we can practice that. Because I think the more that we understand how to do that, the easier it gets. But then we can talk about what are some of the things that you typically tend to have in your diet and how are they in relation to what we've just designed, where we have healthy fats, we have, good proteins, and then we have these carbohydrates that are essential to give us the fuel that we need when it comes to having good energy, right? So any other questions before we wrap up? Yeah,
I did make the recipe that you gave us last
Oh, you did? Okay, what'd you think? Now,
I thought it turned out good.
you thought it? Okay, but can I ask you, now how did you prepare it? Because part of the exercise was to kind of take our time, right, and slow down. Okay, did you do anything special with that?
Well, the day before I got all the ingredients together on the island, and then before I started anything, I measured out all the spices, and there was some chopping that needed to be done before I started, putting everything together.
Okay.
So, and it didn't make a big mess.
Okay. And did you enjoy the process of the
Yeah,
chopping?
it's relaxing when you have everything ready,
Yeah.
and you're not stressed out of, I have to get this. Yeah, so.
That is key. I'm so glad to hear that. I'm glad that you had some time.
Chopping the onion did not work very well.
Okay. Okay. A little more practice,
really
maybe.
Good at it,
A little more practice. Make sure your knife is sharp.
Thank you.
Practice makes perfect. I've been doing it for a long time, so there's that. All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Divas and Dudes. This is the end of our class for today, but looking forward to seeing you all in a couple of weeks again for our final class.